Good afternoon. Welcome back to Passionate World Talk Radio Network. Educate, Enlighten, Entertain. On today's episode of Lest We Forget Historical, host Lillian Colwell will continue the discussion from the article that Thomas B. Edsall, Edsall, who writes a weekly column from Washington, D.C. on politics, demographics, and equality, and his opinion when he wrote this column on what would happen when and if President Donald Trump is elected president once again of the United States. Will he become a dictator? So this is a continuation from April 5th, which is when we first discussed it. Herbert B. Kitschelt, Kitschelt, a political scientist at Duke, emailed a selection of likely Republican initiatives. 1. The new government will use regulatory measures to support the sectors and industries that support it most in terms of electoral votes and party funding. Carbon industries, the construction sector, domestic and manufacturing. 2. The Republicans' regime will exit from all participation in efforts to stop global warming. So face it, you guys are going to become the main barbecue on the Republicans' grill. 3. The politics of a populist Republican administration will aim all undermining of American democracy and changing the level playing field in favor of a party-penetrated state apparatus. The same thing that we're giving Putin a hard time about go to the polls and vote for Putin, but vote. Well, that's what Donald Trump aims to do in the United States. And if you support it, that's great. But remember this. They usually devour their supporters and kill them off. History supports that theory, in case you're interested. Go look at the 4 people who originally started ruling Russia after they killed the Tsar and his family, and then notice there was only one left, and that was Stalin. Or take a look at Hitler and all the people he supported, who supported him, and think about all the people he killed, sent away to prison camps, or got rid of because he didn't like sharing what he had. Just a little thought there, in case you're interested. He then went on and cited Orban, who is the model for Trump, in achieving the goals of undermining the professionalism and neutrality of the judiciary, starting with the Attorney General's office, undermining the non-partnership of the military, using the military for domestic purposes to repress civil liberties and liberal opposition to the erosion of American democracy. Redeploying the national domestic security apparatus, above all the FBI, for his purposes. Passing libel legislation to harass and undercut the liberal media and journalists with the objective to drive them economically out of business while considering conservative media empires and social websites. The politics of cultural polarization will intensify to reestablish the U.S. as a white Christian evangelical country. Does that sound familiar? Oh, yeah. That's what Hitler said. Pure white Germany. In contrast to conservatism as practiced in the U.S., Zerofsky, Zerofsky, wrote about Hungary under Orban Here was this other European tradition of Catholic conservatism that was afraid neither of a strong state nor of using it to promote a conservative vision of life. In the current issue of Foreign Affairs, Alexander Cooley and Daniel H. Nexon, political scientists at Barnard and Georgetown, argue that Orban has, quote, emerged as a media darling of the American right, receiving high praise from Tucker Carlson, arguably the single most influential conservative media personality in the United States. The Conservative Political Action Conference, a major forum of the American right, plans to hold its 2022 annual meeting in Hungary, Cooley and Nexon wrote. And what has Orban done to deserve this attention? Well, they briefly summarize. Orban consolidated power through tactics that were procedurally legal but in substance undercut the rule of law. Same thing that Hitler did in Germany before World War II. He stacked the courts with partisans and pressured, captured, or shut down independent media. That means all the independent internet talk radio stations are going to become a thing of the past. So enjoy your freedom while you may. Cooley and Nexon demonstrated a parallel between what is taking place in Hungary and current developments in the United States. Orban's open assault on academic freedom, including banning gender studies and evicting the Central European University from Hungary, finds analogies in current right-wing efforts in Republican-controlled states to ban the teaching of critical race theory and target liberal and left-wing academics. In an email, Nexon elaborated, there is definitely a transmission belt of ideas between the US and Europeans right now for various stripes of conservatives, reactionary populists, integralists, ethno nationalists. Hungary is becoming what Denmark is for the left, part real life model, part idolized dreamscape. Orban has described Hungary under his rule as an illiberal democracy. In 2019, Freedom House downgraded Hungary from free to partly free, making it the first country in the European Union that is not classified as free, according to the Budapest Business Journal. Now, he asked a number of European scholars about the agenda Trump and a Republican controlled Congress would be most likely to push in 2025. Listen up. In March 2021 paper, Authoritarian Values and the Welfare State, the Social Policy Preferences of Radical Right Voters, Philip Rathgeb, a professor of social policy at the University of Edinburgh, and Marius R. Busemeyer and Alexander H.J. Somm, both of the University of Constance, surveyed voters in 8 Western European countries to determine what kind of welfare state voters of populist radical right parties want and how their preferences differ from voters of mainstream left and right-wing parties. Rathgeb and his co-authors found that populist European voters want a particularistic, authoritarian welfare state. Give them circuses. The Roman Empire said that. The Roman empires. And that's why they gave them all those free blood sports. Yes. And how their preferences differ. Okay, we said that. For deserving benefit recipients, the elderly, while revealing strong support for a workfare approach and a little support for social investment, which means if you don't work, you starve, Or if you don't work, they'll get rid of you because they don't want people sitting around and having vacations. He also wrote in the email, from an ideological perspective, it wouldn't surprise me if Trump prioritized Medicare over Medicaid, given that the former is targeted at the deserving poor, i.e., the elderly and disabled. A pro elderly outlook is very typical of the radical right in Europe, too, because the beneficiaries of schemes like Medicare are typically native, i.e., white citizens who have demonstrated their willingness to work hard over their lifetime, thus being deserving of welfare support. By contrast, I expect little support, perhaps even cuts from Medicaid. He also noted that populist parties oppose social investment policy because such programs are often based on progressive gender values and a commitment to lifelong learning. For example, public provision of childcare helps working women to reconcile work family life versus the male breadwinner model, while training and education forces social mobility in the knowledge economy, i.e., high end services, would be fueled by increased moral panic about white America's decline, a professed sense of having been spoliated and stolen the election, and a renewed sentiment of impunity for its most extreme backers from the January 6th insurrection. My bet is that there is an active plan to reshape the political system so that the elections are not winnable by Democrats and the state be run without the foundation of democracy. And that's what Trump means when there will be bloodshed if he's not elected president of the United States. So actually, he's blackmailing you into thinking that if you don't want division within the country, vote for him. Does it sound like Putin? Does it sound like Hitler? Does it sound like Stalin or Castro? Maybe somebody from China or North Korea, perhaps? And of course, Trump signaled his intentions at a rally last week in Conroe, Texas, declaring that in the case of the January 6th attackers, if it requires pardons, then we will give them pardons because they are being treated so unfairly. Really? Disloyalty? Being a traitor to your country? It's okay, in the former president's words? And the former president went on. If these radical, vicious, racist prosecutors do anything wrong or illegal, I hope we're going to have in this country the biggest protest we've ever had in Washington, D.C., in New York, and Atlanta, and elsewhere. Which makes you kind of wonder if you and the former president really live in the same reality, in the same country. Maybe not. So, this is what we did not have time to go over last week. And I will continue to talk about this because let's face it, folks, if you're so willing to give up your freedom, the right to speak, the right to religion, the right to live, then you're going to have to take the bad news with the good. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today. You can see this all over again at youtube.com/PWR network _PW Talk Radio, over at passionateworldtalkradio.com on our blog, and also on our various directories and other places where we air our programs. I want to thank you very much for listening. And then we do have one date correction on April 19th, Eastern Time, 9:30 a.m., 9 p.m. Singapore time. Jeannie White and Lillian Caldwell will be interviewing the author of The Gold Nuggets, Digitizing Strategies in a Digital Industry, by Vicki Esther Chang and her co-author Lillian Caldwell. So go over to Amazon.com, look up Vicki Esther Chang, and buy the book. You won't regret it. Also, if you're interested in becoming a passionate podcaster on PWR Network, email me at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. Include your name, your email address, and the first 3 episodes of your podcast if you're already doing podcasts, or if you're not, the first 3 MP3 audios of what you've been speaking at recently or a presentation you have given. So we know what you sound like and whether or not you'll be able to deliver the information that you wish to share with the rest of the world. And last but certainly not least, on April 2nd at 7 p.m. Eastern and on April 5th, 4 p.m. Eastern, Passionate World Talk Radio will be holding 2 free master classes, Empower Your Voice, Unlocking Your Podcast Potential. We will be covering the 3 C's of communication, the art of the interview, and mastering your people skills. To sign up, please go over to pwrtalkradio.com. Look for the arrow sign that will indicate you where you need to sign up. And if you cannot find it, email me at pwrnetworkllc@gmail.com. Provide us with your name, your email, and which date, April 2nd or April 5th, you wish to participate. It's an interactive free class, which means whatever I tell you, I'm going to ask you to participate and to be able to tell me in your own words what you've just learned. So thank you very much for listening. And remember, please keep listening. Thank you.